Thank you for joining me for the How to Start Moving and Keep It Going Strategies to Build Your Movement Habit webinar from the Excel study. I'm Dr. Nicole Kulas-Reid, professor in the Faculty of Kinesiology at the University of Calgary and the Excel principal investigator. On behalf of my team, I would like to acknowledge the funding provided to Excel from Canadian Institutes of Health Research, Canadian Cancer Society, and additional support provided by Alberta Cancer Foundation. We all sit, live, and work on traditional territories across Canada. Here in Calgary, that is on the traditional territories of the Blackfoot and the people of the Treaty 7 region in southern Alberta. As well, the city of Calgary is home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. Within Project Excel, we champion equity, diversity, and inclusivity within our team members, our research questions, as well as in the training, programming, and development of all resources for Excel. This webinar is really about how do you start and then maintain your exercise behavior change. We're going to talk about the reasons for change, how we create that lasting habit of really thinking about moving more, what's in your usual day, and how do you have a more active versus sedentary lifestyle. Specifically, we'll then go over some tools that we know are associated with better likelihood of achieving and maintaining that change, including goal setting, tracking behaviors, how we plan for barriers and maintain our motivation, and finally, the importance of social support. We'll close with take-home messages for having yourself build a self-view as an exerciser, as a mover, and building your lifelong movement plan. So first, why change? And really, this comes down to your motivation. What is it that is relevant and important to you, or something that you value that's going to help you give the reason or build that motivation for change? And this can be, a bigger picture thing like your overall quality of life, or it might be benefits that are more specific within one of those usual domains of quality of life. So things like physical changes or your functional ability. Can you engage in your activities of daily living? There also may be reasons for an exercise behavior change tied more to emotional, mood, psychological, or even social benefits. So I think it's really important as you start on this journey of building exercise into your usual routine through your participation in Excel, that you really start to connect to what is of value to you. What is exercise as a health behavior change, a modifiable lifestyle behavior going to provide or afford for you? This will form the basis of really your motivation to change, and ultimately can really help you not only get started, but can help make it stick, i.e. developing the habit of becoming an exerciser. So as we go through this today and you're thinking about even some of the specific strategies such as goal setting, really come back to what's your reason, what's important to you, and then you can really then think about your actual behavior, the skills that you're doing in an Excel class and how they might relate back to the source of what's important for you, whether it is a physical change or whether it's something more to do with your overall mood and well-being. We want to get you started with an Excel, but what's really important for us is that you create an environment for yourself and build the skills that will give you that ability to develop the lasting habit of moving more. And at the core of this, it comes down to something I've already said, but how do you see yourself as a mover or as an exerciser? Many of you have come into this and this is a brand new behavior for you. And so really, pat on the back for just even getting here. And our goal through Excel is to help you develop that confidence or self-efficacy that you believe you can do this, right? So at the core, you'll identify as someone who can move more or someone who can exercise. And so as we start on this journey through Excel, really consider how you identify or define this idea of being a mover or being an exerciser. Does it look like somebody who gets in movement every day? Or does it look like somebody who has structured exercise even 2 or 3 days a week, right? How you define it, what's important again to you, to go back to that earlier slide, right? That is really what's going to be relevant. And again, will help you identify as a mover, whatever that might be, and identify what's important for you to get out of Excel. As you create your identity, as you start to move more, you can start with then the small steps that show yourself that you can do it, right? So simply by attending our Excel classes, those are some small steps to show that you can do this. And you're focused then on the process of someone who's becoming an exerciser. Within Excel, you will learn new skills, right? How to do specific exercises. You'll also be receiving education on the skills outside of the actual doing the exercises, but the skills that are going to enable you to really cement this behavior change into who you are. Ultimately, then facilitating those outcomes that are of value to you: the physical, the functional, the social, the emotional or psychological, right? All of those will come together by, at the core, deciding on and showing yourself through your processes that you are indeed a mover or an exerciser. There are lots of ways to look at behavior change and really how to create success. And what we've put together here is a little bit of what we have seen across the literature, and not just in exercise and cancer specifically, but really just around exercise behavior change, right? And the first one is that, what's of value to you, your motivation. And I really encourage you, as you develop through Excel, is to find not only what motivates you, but what do you have fun with, right? What gives you joy within these classes? It might be learning the new skills and becoming competent. That might make you feel joyful. It may also be connecting with others and developing this sense of community. So finding your motivation really at the start of the journey and seeing how that might change over time. And as long as it brings you that enjoyment, so that when you are engaging in movement, at the core, it is also fun. The second piece to developing and seeing yourself as an exerciser is committing to this process and the progress that will come, right? You're not going to go from 0 minutes to 120 minutes a week or 90 minutes a week just overnight, right? So give yourself grace and figure out how you're going to start to track what you are doing so that you can see your progress over time. You will, over the course of the 12-week Excel program, see progress. Again, go back to what you value and see where you're tracking and how can you see progress, not just in exercise skills, but in some of those other things, such as your ability to set goals that are realistic, or your ability to connect with others, or your ability to have a more positive mood and higher energy. A big piece of building success for longer term behavior change is this third point: social support. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that, but making it social, connecting with others, whether it's somebody that you walk with, somebody that knows what your goals are and holds you accountable even through conversation, or like Excel, joining a class. These can be powerful motivators. They can also be part of that process and that enjoyment factor. It's not all easy though. And that's number 4 here. And we want to acknowledge and then be able to address what are some of the usual barriers. And for all of us, the number one barrier across people trying to start exercise is lack of time. So I really encourage you, and you've already made the first step, you've got Excel scheduled in, but really think about just how do you get in 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes more of movement, little exercise snacks, if you like, or movement snacks throughout your day. And think about, what's typically stopped you from engaging in movement. Is it simply that it hasn't been part of your lifestyle? It may not be a core value of something that is who you see yourself as. Is it that you don't have the skills, or you're unsure if something's going to be safe for you? Is it access? Is it hasn't been fun in the past, right? We want to plan for barriers. And we know as you start to exercise, your barriers may shift. You may find that you do start to value this, for example, but you've got logistical barriers of I'm returning to work, so where do I fit this in, right? And we can, if we acknowledge the barriers, then start to plan for them and come up with some strategies for how you might work around barriers, whether it's a good barrier like we're going on holidays for 2 weeks, or whether it's a tougher barrier like I'm juggling multiple demands in my multiple roles. Where can I fit in my movement? And then finally, it's a reminder that this is a process and a journey, and you want to celebrate your progress and your successes along the way. And we're going to talk more about that in relationship to goal setting and tracking behaviors. So the first one, and probably our most evidence-based strategy, self-regulatory strategy for helping you change and develop this new exercise behavior in particular, is to set goals that really help you create that process or the roadmap for where you want to go. And when we think about goal setting at the highest level, there's two different types of goals. The outcome, so what is the result you're wanting to achieve? And that's okay to set goals that are outcome related. However, to be effective, you really need to break that down and set up process goals, which are about the steps on the way towards that outcome, right? So you may have an outcome goal of being able to walk the Terry Fox run in September, right? So a 5K walk, 2K walk, whatever your goal might be. And that's a long-term goal. So process goals are, okay, what am I going to do each and every day or week or across the months before that time hits that will allow me to be successful in doing that 2K or that 5K, right? And so that would be breaking it down into maybe daily goals and then weekly goals for minutes or steps or activities you're going to do that give you the energy, the strength, the functional ability to reach that outcome goal. When we set process goals that are SMART goals, we know they can be extremely motivating and really, again, keep you connected to your intentions and where you want to be in terms of those outcomes. SMART goals are specific. So you're detailing the action that you are going to take. They're measurable. We can say, yes, I did it, or yes, I didn't, right? Did I get my minutes in? Did I get my steps in? Did I do my stretching? Whatever that goal is. They're attainable, right? So you don't want to set a goal that is now nowhere near where you're at, right? It's so far from your starting point, because if you do that, it's frustration, it's not motivation. Part of that attainable is the R's here, right? They're relevant and realistic. And I think really important here is the relevancy. So if you go back to your values, okay, what's important to you? What outcomes are you ultimately looking at? It might be more energy. It might be being able to be functional to look after grandkids and get up and down off the floor. It might be to really change your overall fitness level. But whatever is relevant to you should really guide then the types of goals that you are setting. And then finally, my favorite part of the SMART goal framework is these last two, setting the time frame. And I am very big on setting more short-term goals, because then when we achieve them or not, we can really use that as motivation to keep our progress moving forward, right? So set daily or weekly goals, at most a 2-week goal, so that you've got that clear endpoint and you can see if you've reached it. Great, celebrate your success. Or you can see if you're still short, and then you readjust and then reevaluate at a next set time point. And then most importantly is our together factor, right? And that comes down to this idea of what social support can you build in, whether it's somebody that knows your goals and you're accountable to, whether it's somebody that's doing the physical activity with you, or that cheerleader on the sideline, or the Excel community, your class, your instructor, right? That community you will find will lift you up over the course of the Excel program and really help facilitate you moving towards those goals. So some other things to consider with the recap on goal setting is it's okay, set both those long and short-term goals, the process and the outcomes, and you use really the shorter-term goals around process to keep you motivated to reach those outcomes. Challenge yourself realistically, okay? Make them attainable but challenging, ambitious enough so that you are really proud when you do accomplish them. Focus on the process, right? Look forward to your participation, and really, how do you feel day to day with exercise, with movement? Do you notice differences on the days you have Excel versus days you don't? And on days you don't, what can you start to add in that will support this behavior change? And then finally, if you've got that time frame tied to your goals, reevaluate your goals, right? See if you've made them, celebrate success. And if you do need to reevaluate and reset them, that will help you stay motivated. Okay. And you don't want to get stuck on a goal that's so far out that it just, isn't even top of mind. It's not something that you're thinking about, or you feel you're really struggling because you're not there yet. Again, that means you just need to break it down and really address, okay, well, what can I do within this week that's going to move me in that process and it's going to show me my progress. Okay, so goal setting, really, really important. The next really self-regulatory skill is about tracking your health behaviors. And it's tied very much to goal setting, right? If we've got a goal and a process, we want to track specifics, whether again it's your minutes, whether it's your intensity, whether it is attendance. Okay, but tracking your health behavior, tracking your exercise behavior allows you to see that progression and the trends towards reaching your goals and supporting your behavior change. It keeps you accountable again and allows you to reset and adjust if needed. And it can reaffirm if you're doing the right things, right? Are your actions supporting achieving your goals? Or do you need to adjust them and change how you're looking at this health behavior change? So you can track all sorts of different lifestyle behaviors, right? And we're going to talk specifically, though, about tracking physical activity. But you can track things like nutrition, like your sleep, like your emotional well-being and mood. And you may want to start tracking those in relationship to your actual exercise behavior. But for tracking physical activity, it can be all sorts of things, right? So your Excel attendance, it can be the minutes you get in just doing walking or doing stretching, how hard you're working or the different types of activity that you're doing, how it makes you feel, right? So do you notice, excuse me, increase in energy and a decrease in fatigue? Okay, that can be very motivating if you struggle with fatigue and you notice, hey, when I do at least 10 minutes of activity, I seem to have more energy and less fatigue. So lots of different things. And again, track what is of value to you, track what's going to allow you to see process and progress. Lots of different ways to track, and you may be introduced to some of these within the Excel program, or you may be doing some of these on your own. So let's just briefly go through these different ways that you can track your physical activity behavior change. And the first one can be simple, pen and paper. It can be on like your smartphone using just like a notes function on your phone. But it's really just logging things, diary, journaling. And I will say that we know this works for people that have done this regularly, right? So if you already journal, this can be an excellent way of tracking. If journaling is also a new behavior, then it might be harder to cement this behavior, right? So really take that into consideration if you're thinking about, okay, I'm going to start tracking all my physical activity. If you're naturally somebody that writes lists and tracks things, then great. If you're not, make sure it's not an increased barrier to then you doing something. The advantages of tracking, you get to write down exactly, personalize it, you can recall it, you can be as comprehensive or not as you want. And we know that by writing things down, we often increase our commitment to that behavior change. The flip side of all of that writing is it can be time consuming, and it may depend if you have access to your journal or to your phone, if you're on your phone, whether you can actually do it at a time that is convenient for you. Okay, but it can be a great tool, especially if you are already somebody who likes to track things, write things down, make your lists. This can be a really great tool. Kind of the next level of a log diary is to use something that's a bit more automated, a digital journal or a smartphone app, right? So again, on your phone, not just the notes function, but there can be, and there are all sorts of apps that you can really tap into to help you track and maybe make it a bit more automated, right? So that's one of the advantages. Again, you can usually have pretty concise recall. And for most people, if you have an app, especially if it has functions where it alerts you, you know, you've got it available, it's there. The disadvantages are that many of these apps have some algorithms kind of built into what they might track. And sometimes it's not as accurate or it's not specific to you. So it might ask you to do a lot of things that you don't value or that you don't necessarily want to do. And finally, I will just say for anything that's online, oftentimes the companies have privacy statements. So make sure you read it before you consent or start using the app, and know that sometimes when your information goes in, it may be then held by that company and they have access to it. So just something to keep in mind in terms of what you are comfortable with. Another way of tracking, and this is very, very popular, you'll see lots of people, I've got a smartwatch on, but it's to have an activity tracker, and they can be all sorts of different shapes and forms. You often see people that have the wrist ones, but they can be worn on the hip, they can be ankle, heart rate monitors around the chest for activity. So there's lots of different types. The general advantages is that once you've strapped them on and set it up, low effort, collects really accurate, for the most part, objective data. So it can track those things like minutes and steps and intensity, even depending on what you're using, and relatively easy to maintain and to use, right? They're longer battery lives, you know, as long as you're wearing it, you're essentially tracking. Clear disadvantages. can be very expensive, right? So depending on what you're getting, there is a cost that you don't see with a pen and paper, or even with many apps that can be free. The no conscious recall, so it's collecting data passively and it's in there. So unless you're then going into the apps associated with the tracker, you're really not getting that data to change your behavior. It can be good in the moment, or if there's a summary on your screen, it can be good. You look down and go, oh, I haven't got all my minutes in, I'm going to squeeze a walk in, right? And so it can be good to change your behavior, but oftentimes the value of the activity tracker comes from going into the app and seeing your actual data and then using it to help change. Okay, so it can take a bit more work than as automated and as much as it collects. So a number of ways that you can use tracking along with the goal setting. And I say, really pick what is of value to you, what reflects information that you're going to use for your progress and your process through behavior change. And that fits into your lifestyle, right? So if it's pen and paper, if it is doing sessions, if it's just checking off on your calendar, very simply, hey, I did my Excel classes twice this week and I got in 10 more minutes. That's perfect, as long as you've got something to reflect on where your change is at. Then really the next step is reality, right? And we know behavior change is hard. If it was easy, everybody would just be doing it, to borrow Nike's slogan. Okay, but oftentimes real life happens, barriers happen, there's obstacles in our way. So even with the best of intentions and plans, we'll often have setbacks or things won't progress the way we want. And so preparing for these potential obstacles and barriers can really help us have the plans to then overcome them or deal with them. As I mentioned, the number one barrier across all exercisers is lack of time. For many individuals, other common barriers include lack of desire, not sure what you can do, and this one is often elevated for individuals who are going through cancer treatment. What's safe, what's effective, what can I do at different stages? Sometimes people don't come with a background in fitness, and so just not knowing how to do exercises can be a barrier. Often symptom management, treatment-related side effects, depending on where you are on the journey, that not feeling well. I mean, most of us, when we have a cold, don't feel like exercising. And so during treatment or living with longer term effects can really be significant barriers. And then changes in our usual routine. And these can be positive changes, like you're going on a holiday, or negative changes. You've got a bunch of appointments, or just life. You've got work, you've got children, you've got other commitments. Where does exercise fit around all of this? And so I think a key message is really give yourself grace as you make changes in your behaviors. It's not going to be perfect, and that's okay, right? So just think about, even on a day when I can't get my class in, or I've missed it because of an appointment, what can I do? Just 5-10 minutes, right? Better than nothing. And so trying not to have that all or none. Oh, if I didn't make class, then I can't do anything. If you start to learn the skills, I didn't make class, so I will get in 10 minutes on my mat and do some balance and core, right? Whatever makes you feel good. The first step in overcoming barriers is then to identify them, right? So is your barrier return to work? Is your barrier a busy home lifestyle with children? Is your barrier symptom management? What are your barriers? Identify them and then see if you can start to come up with some plans for support. And this can be, number one, setting your environment up for success. So strategically placing your tights, your sweatpants, your runners, your water bottle, light weights or bands, keeping them visual and out so that you see it and it twigs you, okay, I'm going to do this. I know for myself, I have a yoga mat that's often just out at home. And just a reminder, instead of sitting down to watch a show, get on the floor and I can do some core, or I can do some stretching while I've got the TV on in the background. Another big piece around barriers and managing them is social support. So how can you use your Excel program as support? Maybe as a form of accountability, right? To keep you coming to classes. The knowledge of the instructor or your co-participants. What types of support do you need and how do you need it? So other people in your home environment, resources that are available online, other educational pieces or videos to use when you can't make your usual scheduled activity. There are a ton of different resources that can facilitate the how and the what of support. So be sure to look for those through the Excel program or to ask your instructor more. I think a big piece of overcoming barriers, especially the time barrier, is this fourth point here. And that's about valuing movement as a critical part of building wellness into your cancer journey. So schedule it into your week, into your daily activities. As we start to value exercise, movement as a key aspect of living well with cancer, then we're less likely to have usual routines or other things throw us completely off whack and get us off track in our progress. Prioritize your well-being, and again, back to that beginning, identify, tell yourself you are an exerciser. So if you are an exerciser, you see yourself as a mover, you will continue to prioritize. And again, life will happen. So maybe your plan for a class doesn't happen, but you get 10 minutes of a walk in, or you have a visit with a friend, and instead of sitting for coffee, you go for a walk, right? So think about how you can prioritize wellness via movement into your usual routine. And so this gets us to the point around social support. And social support is really assistance in various forms that can help you start and keep going with physical activity. We know that social support is absolutely essential to developing the habit of movement or the habit of exercise. And it's really about part of changing the environment around you so that it is valued and it is considered part of who you are in your usual routine. We know that with individuals who receive more social support, they report a higher quality of life and more positive feelings of well-being. And so the social support can be, support specifically assistance tangible to doing the exercise, like what a fitness leader provides. They're giving you the program to follow. It can also be companionship and motivation, supporting seeing yourselves and promoting health and wellness across your journey, and many more things. But the key aspect of all of this is to really tap into social support and to determine what's of value to you. What do you need to build this self as exerciser and to facilitate your exercise behavior change? So think about where it comes from: your family, your friends, your neighbors, the Excel community, the mentor, coach, fitness leader that you have here. It can be back in your work environment and people respecting and supporting that you get movement minutes during your lunch breaks or you take walking meetings. Cancer support groups may be a valuable source of support and where you learn more about wellness and lifestyle behavior change in general. And then, of course, there are many different online social networks that you can tap into for support. Okay, so again, a key aspect of ensuring that you can live well is building that support around it so that it's valued and just part of who you are and what your usual activities are. So to wrap it up, we know there are key self-regulatory skills or behavior change strategies that are absolutely essential. So goal setting, tracking behaviors, planning for barriers, and building social support to help you start engaging in exercise behavior change and to making that movement really stick. Key as you build these different strategies is that you see yourself at the core as a mover. You have that confidence that you are building the skills, actual exercise skills, but also those behavior change skills so that you can see yourself building this into your usual routine. Identify your goals to help you set your intentions, to see where your journey is going to go, and to be really realistic about what your exercise habit is going to look like. You'll have been introduced in Excel to this idea of our exercise guidelines and getting 90 minutes of aerobic activity and 2+ days of functional strength training types of activity, as well as balance and flexibility. Really, but think about, okay, if that works for you and you can get all of that in, that's wonderful and optimal for your health and wellness. But if reality for you is that you get 20 minutes 3 days a week after the Excel program, and that's what you can maintain and is consistent and has you feeling well, then that's absolutely wonderful for your pathway. Okay, so identify your goals, chart what your pathway needs to look like that's realistic for your lifestyle. And then finally, within that, identify what's going to help motivate you, how you can plan for barriers, and where is that social support that you can build in to optimize achieving success along your pathway. As we end this webinar, I'd like you to just also think about your journey. So wherever you are within Excel, within your cancer journey, or within behavior change, it is a process and it's not always going to be easy. I think it's really critical to think about where you are, where you are starting from and where you are now. And, where you might want to be might still be a little ways out there. But it's really important to always look back at where you came from in your journey so far, right? So it's not just, again, about the destination at the end, right? But where has your progress been made so far? And celebrate that, right? Reflect on that success and how much you may have already been supported and been able to do in your change. And use that as your motivation, whether it's little victories or big victories. Use that progress and your process through this pathway to really motivate you for maintaining and building that habit of exercise behavior change. With that, I will leave you with our contact information. Please don't hesitate at all to reach out to Juliana, the Excel Research Coordinator, or your local site coordinator. As well, you can reach us at wellnesslab@ucalgary.ca. And again, I would like to thank the funding support for Excel, helping us to build exercise for cancer, to enhance living well, and reaching individuals across Canada, from Canadian Institutes of Health Research, the Canadian Cancer Society, and with funding support from the Alberta Cancer Foundation. Thank you.